All right, we're back here with Alex O'Connor, with Cliff and Stuart Knetchle. Once again, I think that's how you pronounce it. He's talking about what if you were a Canaanite and the value of human life. It's pretty interesting. I like this. Let's start it.
Of the Canaanites. But before I'll ask you a question that I asked to William Lane Craig. I'm interested in your response, which is: suppose you woke up tomorrow and you were a Canaanite. You just sort of had woke up in someone else's body. You traveled back in time. You're a Canaanite now. You live in that community. You're surrounded by temptations, and you're a sinful man. You give in to some of them. Then the Israelites come marching in and start attacking you. They start trying to kill you and your family. Would you fight back?
Yes, I'd probably fight back. I would try to defend myself and defend my family.
Would you be wrong to do that? Or suppose
Probably
suppose
not.
suppose that you go back now and you retain the knowledge you have. You think it's very strange that I just woken up in the body of a Canaanite. But I remember where I was. I remember doing that podcast with Alex, and no one believes you. They don't even know what a podcast is. Yeah. What a glorious time to be alive. Um, and and you know where you are. You recognize it. You're like, I've been put here. This is a test. God is testing me somehow. I don't know what's going on, but I'm a Canaanite now, and the armies of Moses are coming towards you, and you know that they're the Israelites. You know that they've got God on their side. Do you still fight back?
Well, I think the problem with your use of the word genocide or ethnic cleansing is that a few hundred years later, God used first the Assyrians and then the Babylonians to punish the Jews for their immorality.
Mm.
So this is not just a land squabble that
Mm.
we're reading about in the Old Testament. We're reading about a God who is a judge, judges the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and then a few hundred years later, he judges the Jews, and they're swept into captivity. And that was the judgment of God, according to the Hebrew prophets.
Mm-hmm.
That was the judgment of God.
Would you accept that judgment? I mean, and especially if you were transported back with your family, and you know for a fact that, okay, I'm now Canaanite. I'm a sinful man. Maybe I have the strength to say, okay, God is issuing His judgment on me. I'll repent in my last moments. I'll let that soldier put me to the sword as God has commanded, and hopefully I'll be shown the grace of God. But would you be willing to say, oh yeah, my child, my 2-year-old child, yeah, sure, yeah, no, this is what God wants. This is what's going to happen. Like, it seems to me an absurd request to make of somebody. Of course they couldn't do that. And yet we're painting these Canaanites as these terrible, immoral people, and maybe they were, but like, I struggle to think that even if that were the case, that the right thing to do is to just sort of accept the judgment of God and say, okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's my child.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'll point them out to you.
Mm-hmm.
They're hiding in the room upstairs.
Whenever he asks a question, they seem to not answer the question appropriately. Um, they seem to like beat around it, and it's a very common strategy of Christians that believe that the Bible is 100% factual truth in their own sense. And he's about to do that again, I bet. I've watched this a couple of times, and his both their responses are so weird. I don't think they know how to answer it. My response is yes, I would defend myself, even if I knew it was to sin against God. Um, there are, I believe that if God exists, if God exists 100%, and the pearly gates, heaven, hell, if you, I would rather possibly be forgiven and allowed into heaven as somebody that went against God, defending the things that I love as I was created to do, than be at a lower tier in heaven or whatever, than be at the top tier uh, and have my family sullied or soiled or ruined because I didn't want to defend them because of God's will or something. I believe that there's men out there that have to do heinous things in order to just be human. And there's nothing against that. God doesn't tell you not to sin. God tells you to try to, or Jesus tells you to try to live a more sinless life. But since Adam and Eve did that thing with the fruit or whatever it was, we are no longer sinless. You cannot be perfect anymore, and that's the whole point. Is that you're going to make tough decisions where you will break God's will or break God's rule, and you're just gonna have to live with that. I don't think you should damn yourself to hell if you believe in this, but if it comes down to it, I think morally, as a human being, I would defend my family.
Because I know that it's the will of God that for some reason, they all be killed. I know that for some reason, even the children, even the innocent children, God, for some reason that I'll never understand, wants them to be put to the sword. And so I tell you what, Mr. Canaanite, don't kill me yet, because I'm first going to betray my family and tell you where they all are, because I know that's the will of God. I think it would it would be an insane prospect to even
You
consider.
bet. That would be insane. It's also kind of difficult to think about Jesus Christ bleeding and dying on a cross to make atonement for human sin.
Like, what does it
That's
have to
kind of
do
repugnant in one sense.
with anything?
So there are a lot of things when it comes to dealing with the problem of sin and the judgment of God that are very difficult. My God, why have you forsaken me? I mean, is that really necessary? Why can't just God wave a wand and say you're all forgiven? Why is the cross so necessary? Is that not morally
Great points.
repugnant in
Great
some
points.
ways? Well, in some ways, I think it is morally repugnant. And yet, that is how God brings justice and mercy together there at the cross. And so, yes, God is a God who judges, and I have a problem with his judgment often. I don't like it. And I struggle with the Old Testament wars. I struggle with the cross in terms of Jesus absorbing the hit from my sin. And
At least he's allowed to. At least he has. I should say allowed. At least he has admitted to having an issue with some judgments of God, and that's probably a sin to say that. To be honest, you probably don't look very good in God's eyes when you question him, as we've seen in many books like Job and everything. Uh, he's able to actually say those words. I don't know if he will regret those ever. But yeah, I mean that I have a whole me personally, I have a huge issue with the Old Testament and the New Testament. I have an issue with who wrote it, who put it together, how it's put together, how it's written, everything about it. I have a huge issue in believing it. I don't believe you have to be a Christian and follow the book, the Bible at all. Like, I just don't believe that. They didn't have the Bible back then. They don't. I mean, half the people that were following Jesus couldn't even read. Probably more than half couldn't read. And not only that, they probably couldn't read any version of the Gospels, the good news that was written. So even if they could read, they couldn't read the Greek that was written in. So let's just put it that way for now. But I like that Cliff here. He did say that he does issue. He might not want to use the word issue, but he has a misunderstanding of God's judgment. So I'll give him that. He might have just used the wrong word. Misunderstanding is usually what a lot of Christians say. I don't understand God. I have faith in the things that he does or chooses to do.
times I'm like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me, and why shouldn't it be possible? So there are a lot of deep questions that I don't have easy answers for. But I think that Job, who we started off with, is quite an example. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. I don't understand
Brings up
why he
Job.
judges the way he does, why he allows certain things to happen exactly the way they happen. I don't understand exactly why Christ had to sacrifice his life on a cross. That was an incredibly painful experience, obviously.
Well, we know
And yet-
exactly why Jesus had to sacrifice someone. They tell us why Jesus did that. So we have a pretty good understanding of the Jesus and cross thing. It's a dead horse at this point. Jesus had to do it because that's what he was put here for. It's God knowing the future and knowing that he will have to cleanse earth somehow. He did it with a flood. Now he's doing it with Jesus. Blah, blah, blah. Sin is now forgiven. And through his Son, Jesus, Lord, and Christ, or something like that. I am very bad with all these exact words and everything. Alex does a much better job. Of course, he also has probably paper in front of him.
I am committed to justice being a real value that flows from the character of God, and the way God dispenses justice is really often outside my understanding at this point.
Mm.
Yeah, there it is. So outside of his understanding, so you have to have some amount of faith to be a good Christian. Another thing to remember is Christianity isn't about explaining God's purpose, God's will. Christianity is explaining uh, how you get from here, the physical world, to the non-physical world, uh, and not that non-physical world of being hell to be in heaven. It's honestly I can't remember who said it, but the New Testament is a book of death or something like that because it's all about revelation. It's all about dying, and I think that's a little on the extreme side, but I do like that as a description to give people. Everything is about the New Testament is revelation. It's about uh, Jesus coming, Jesus saving, Jesus leaving, Jesus coming, Jesus saving. It's all revelation.
Um,
And why, when it comes to valuing these children and these women, if you were back in that day and age, you wouldn't be asking that question. You wouldn't be struggling with that. You would
That's
say,
not the point of the question. The point of the question is that you do have this information that you are asking this question.
"Oh, women and children have no value.
Mm.
That's fine if they get put to the sword or if they get plundered in any kind of way. If there is no God, and if thank heaven during the Roman Empire, being created in the image of God, like Luc Ferry, the atheist, talked about, swept across the known world and changed the value of every single human being, which was totally foreign to every other civilization. But if you look at those children, if you look at those women at that time period, of course, put them to the sword. They have no ultimate value.
I mean, I'm not a historian.
No,
but
yeah.
my understanding is
Women
that
and children always,
Yeah.
always
traditional
had
idea
value.
of men going to war and women staying at home. It's like men go to protect their homeland, to protect their wives, to protect their children. That's what it is that they're protecting. It's the men who are the expendable ones, because they're the ones that the state says, okay,
Always have
we
been.
must protect our nation, so we're going to take all of our men and we're going to send them out, and they could all die, but we're going to do that to implying that the thing that needs protecting, the thing that's valuable, are the women and the children that stay at home, and the buildings and the culture, whatever. And it's the men who are expendable. Yeah, send them out,
Yes.
cannon fodder,
Mhm.
and they'll get killed. And so, I struggle to believe that even as an ancient person. I think, in other words, if somebody bursts into my home at almost any point in history, the expectation of the culture that I found myself in at random would be that I throw myself in front of my wife and children, because I'm the man of the house. I wouldn't say, oh goodness, someone's going to die here. Let me grab my wife and my child and use them as shields because they have no value.
But you wouldn't do it for somebody of a different kind.
I probably wouldn't. I mean, maybe I would jump in front of a stranger. I'd be
Why during that time period would you do that?
Well, I'd be as likely to do that, I think, as I think somebody would today, because people did do that. But particularly with women, I mean,
Stuart's argument is terrible here. All throughout history, just like Alex said, women and children have had unbelievable amount of value when it comes to life. We have always, always protected women and children. This is without a doubt the truth, factual evidence. Pretty much, minus China, there has always been more women on planet Earth than males because men go to war. Men sacrifice themselves for their families and their friends. This is how it's always been.
But from your position, when it comes to the value of a human being, from your worldview,
sure.
why would you do that?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Like, why would I do that? Say I'm being me.
So my point was larger than your good point.
Yeah.
It's just a value question.
Yeah.
Because this is another reason why it gets back to your very initial question to us before we started.
Yeah.
Meaning, value, what is this hole that so many people in the U.S. are all of a sudden feeling, it seems? And a big part of it is value. I ascribe value to you if I so desire. If you're going to help me climb the corporate ladder in some kind of way, I'll ascribe more value to you. Otherwise, you're just in my way.
Yeah.
And we see this time and time again.
Yeah.
And so from a Christian lens and worldview, we're looking back on the Old Testament yet again, and we're saying value, value, value. But during that time period, if you're telling us to become Canaanites during that time period, well, we're not looking ultimately at women and children as valuable, even if the man perhaps, yes, lays down the life for the children. Yet again, we have to figure out, we have to get to the point of saying, okay, where did this value for human beings come from? Where did the value for animals come from?
Mhm.
Why do they have value objectively? And I've never heard a fulfilling response to that one from a secularist
Oh, sure. Or an atheist, perhaps,
or an
because
atheist. Yeah,
I
even
suppose
more so.
you could be a religious secularist, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, and then
Elaine
they
David's
might
on
think
one of
that everyone's made in the image of God, but we shouldn't, embody that spirit into the, institution of government.
Here's an analogy that helps me.
Mhm.
That is a very good point from a Christian perspective and even a non-Christian perspective. I believe as a whole there are morals. There's not good morals or bad morals. There's just morals. These morals come from a evolutionary background of respecting life because we've learned throughout just living millions of years as species that we protect this life with a life. You know what I mean? So I like his thing is that you can't. I bring religion into it, and in a sense, religion that there's a higher power that these morals just come down from. It's just how it is. We've got to respect life. We've got to respect the things that happen. You can be mad at a hurricane all you want, but at the end of the day, you still got to respect the thing. Like you gotta. That's less of a moral, but a moral being like we don't just kill children without a reason. Even Aztecs and Mayans had a reason. They sacrificed them for some sort of god reason or whatever. And it was still a respected life. The life itself was respected. Some of those people in those cultures, they laid down their lives voluntarily. But the life was still respected. It's just a moral thing that you respect life. And yes, I will admit that I don't know. I feel like it comes down from a higher being. Once again, I don't have an issue with Christians being Christians. I have an issue with Christians defending things in a book that's been edited how many times by how many people. So, and I know that's just me being the typical response to the Bible and everything. And that's what Let's just keep this going.
Airplane goes down.
Mm.
5 people swimming in the water, life raft that can only fit 4.
Mm.
How do you make the decision?
Mm-hmm.
Which one you're going to allow to
This is
drown
easy.
and which 4 you're going to put in the life raft? And so a professor stands in front of his class and says, "Come on, guys, give me an answer."
Yeah.
All right?
This is easy.
And everybody squirms. Well, are we going to let the cheerleader go in because she's really pretty? We're going to let the
Easy.
very intelligent one, number 1 in the class, go in because he's very intelligent. We're going to let the superstar athlete go in there. And then I guess the little nobody just drowns. And so you see, the professor says, "See, it's all just relative." No, it's not all just relative, Professor. The reason that we're having a real problem right now, the reason we're confronted by an ethical dilemma right now, Professor, is because we really understand human value.
Yeah.
If humans were not valuable, it really wouldn't matter which 4 you put in the life raft and which one you let drown. It's all just chance, and we're all just glorified apes.
So how would you make that decision? So suppose it's the other way around. Suppose that there are 5 people in the boat.
This
It's
is an
sinking.
easy
Yeah.
question.
And
Gotta
all
throw
five,
one out.
all 5 are going to die. Someone's got to get thrown out because
Yeah.
no one's volunteering. In a way, you might say, well, I just wouldn't be willing to do that, so I'll just let the boat sink. But then you're self-sacrificing, so you may as well just jump out the boat yourself. Oh, maybe that would be your answer. Maybe it would be like, well, I'll jump out of the boat then. But, how would you go about trying to make that decision? Suppose you're not in the decision. You've got to dictate the terms of the decision-making. I mean, do you
Right.
have, anything to say for a situation like that?
I sure would. Not saying that I would do it,
Right.
but I hope that I would sacrifice my life and jump out and let the other 4 live. That's what Christ calls me to do.
Okay, suppose you're
But no guarantees, obviously. I'm not claiming to be some super sacrificial guy.
Suppose you're super glued to the boat, right? You can't jump out. It's not possible, right?
Uh-huh.
But you're
This is a harder
you're
question that
Cliff,
Alex is.
you're the intellectual
asking.
guy with the YouTube channel. People listen to you. You get to make the decision, and it's going down, and no one's volunteering. I mean, you're going to die anyway. You're super glued to the thing, right? So, but you don't want to save yourself. You just know that everyone's going to die if you don't throw someone out. Or do you say, all right, everybody, I think we should all take one for the team here?
Right.
Is that
Sure.
probably what you'd say?
I would try and exercise leadership. But remember now, The whole reason we're facing an
Yeah,
ethical
yeah.
dilemma is because we believe that there is a God who created people in his image, who loves them. People are valuable. Therefore, we just can't discard a person. But if there is no
You can't
God, it's
just
all a
discard a
cosmic
person.
crapshoot.
So would that mean then in that situation you would be
So in this situation, let's go with Alex's, where I'm super glued to a raft and I have to help the others make a decision on who we dispose of. Let's say everybody's super glued to the raft until you get everybody to vote on one person. That's a harder situation than can ever be conceived of. It's actually impossible, and it's been proven throughout history through stories that this is not an actual situation that happens. But yes, you would sin. You would have to take somebody's life, right? You'd have to kick the fifth person out. In Mr. Cliff's the standard view is that somebody would have to choose to sacrifice themselves. That is a more common thing, believe it or not, than ever. You look at who was on the boats for D-Day. Kids had signed up for the military to go there and fight the Nazis, the Axis powers. I mean, it is wild to think that this discussion still goes on. Men, let's say there's 5 men. One of those men out of those 5 will choose to sacrifice themselves. This is not a discussion whatsoever. One of those 5 guaranteed random men will, from wherever, will choose to sacrifice themselves for the other 4. Let's say there's 4 women and 1 man. I almost guarantee you that man will sacrifice himself for those 4 women. Almost with heartache, with a long thought that, just you just can't let go. But in the end, I truly believe that a man would sacrifice himself for 4 women. 1 man, yeah, guaranteed. I can almost, you put these super glue things onto things, and it just makes it harder to answer. Alex O'Connor has very good questions, but I think that goes against human nature. I believe human nature super succeeds some of these philosophical questions, and I think Cliff could have been like, yeah, well, that's the one situation where it's like, well, yeah, well, if you look at human nature, that super glue thing just doesn't happen. I would answer Alex's question like it did, is yes, I would become the immoral incumbent of that situation and be like, yay, man, it's your turn to go. Like, you're the weakest link here. Get off the raft. As bad as that sounds, not everybody can be a hero. You know what I mean? You're going to upset God. You're going to sin. You're going to do terrible things in your life. And that's the point of these discussions, is to admit that you cannot live a perfect life whatsoever. And I think Cliff and Stuart need to just say that. Like, you can't live a perfect life. You're going to sin. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm a terrible human being. I am human. And I think he does, in fact, in this near future.
be
So
forced
let's
into
keep
one of
going.
those sort of counterintuitive, but ultimately maybe sensible scenarios where you say, look, if no one's volunteering, then the boat goes down and all 5 of us die, because we're not utilitarians here. We're not like, there are many
Good.
situations where you'd let
We'd
many
use
people
reason.
die. Yeah, but
We'd reason with
is that how
everybody.
you would approach a situation like that? You would
Mhm.
say that because it's wrong to force someone over the side of the boat,
Mm-hmm.
all 5 of us are going to die now.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be probably your response to that scenario?
Might be. I can promise you, Alex, in that situation, I really don't know what I would do.
Yeah, sure. I'm fascinated by these kinds of
I
cases.
think he
We
does.
test our
I think he
intuitions. It's like,
does.
the ticking time bomb case for torture. People who think that torture is totally immoral. You say, well, what if a bomb was about to go off in Manhattan?
Mm-hmm.
I like to
Mm-hmm.
adapt this for my Catholic friends when it comes to the institution of confession. This is really interesting idea, because the Catholic confessional is sacred. It's not like when you go to therapy and they say this is confidential, unless of course you say anything that's going to put someone in danger. It's like, no, this is confidential. Like there's no, I'm not allowed.
Just let you know, if you're going to harm somebody, I think by law, the priest has to tell the authorities. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure that's actually a thing. Even though they are breaking their code or whatever.
To say anything. And so someone comes in and says, Father, I've just poisoned the chalice with which, Father David out there is about to serve mass.
Mm-hmm.
Do you say something? And I think for the Catholic, they are committed to the view of saying, actually, no, the priest would have to let that
Wow.
happen, because otherwise it would require breaking the seal of the confessional.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you sort of burst out of the room and you run over there and you knock over them and say, no one drink it, right? You've given away information that you've obviously just learned in
Alex
confessional, which is also not allowed. I mean, maybe there'd
gives
be a
me-
way of doing it. And
Alex right here gives me another way to just help redefine the fact that you're a terrible human being, so you have to sin in order to protect other people.
I've talked to my Catholic friends about this, especially priests and people who are training to be priests. What would you do here? And they're like, well, maybe I would find a way to sort of go and take the wine and swap it out and make it look like I'm doing something else. And I'm like, well, what if they asked you? And they said, why are you doing that? Are you going to lie?
Yes.
You're not allowed to lie either. Like, what are you going to do?
You are allowed
but
to lie.
There's a similar circumstance there of like,
You are allowed to sin.
what if the person says, Father, I've just planted a bomb in Manhattan and it's about to go off? And of course, the Catholic priest would probably say, well, as part of your penance, 10 Hail Marys, 2 Our Fathers, and a call to the NYPD with the exact location and how to disarm the bomb. But suppose the person halfway through the confession sort of goes, I regret this, and they sort of run away. I think a Catholic is committed to this counterintuitive position of saying, as weird as it seems, the right thing to do here, because we have our principle, and a principle's only a principle when it's tested, is that, yeah, we let that bomb go off. Now, we can take umbrage with that, because we could say that maybe the Catholic confessional is wrong for that reason. But in this case, maybe that's a more reasonable example. Maybe that is just what you do. You let them sink. But I don't know, 100 people? 1,000 people? Well, 100. What if it's 5 people in a boat and there are 2 children? There are 2 babies in the boat, and someone's got to go overboard, otherwise everyone drowns, including the babies. Is it still just like, well, okay, we'll just let it sink? Or is it like, actually, eeny, meeny, miny, off you pop, And I'm not necessarily asking what you would do here, because of course moral strength is a different thing. But what should you do here? Is there not a scenario where you would say, look, someone's got to go overboard here. Let's just do a raffle. Let's make it as fair as possibly can be. But whatever comes up, you're off the boat.
Okay, maybe a raffle. But if you start choosing, that is such a slippery slope. It's scary.
Yeah, but that's the problem, right? Is that but then the other scary alternative is that you let those 5 babies in the boat just drown.
Right. But yet again, this type of worldview that you're espousing and the indignation you have here was not set by the Greeks, was not set by the Romans, was not set by A.C. Grayling. It was not set by any of these guys. This came directly out of the Christian worldview, where all of a sudden you're having you're so focused in such a razor sharp kind of way on the value of each and every individual in there, when so clearly the Greeks would have said, oh, get the women out first. Oh, obviously get the babies out first. Let them all drown, and the men will stay in here. That's totally normal.
As the Christian would have said, just, well, God's obviously judging us somehow.
That's never been normal.
Why don't we just exterminate them all, including the children? Oh, what about your pet dog at home? Well, somebody better stay alive. We better save somebody so they can go back and kill everyone else who's left at home. I don't know. But look, I think I almost want to sort of end here, because this is very full circle. I think we've covered a lot of grounds, but I did want to ask about one more thing, which is something that's been mentioned a couple of times. We mentioned at the beginning, which is this concept of forgiveness, this concept of Jesus. It's a bit of a.
All right, let's end that here. He's on to the next question and everything. If there's 5 babies plus you, so there's 6. The only way I can answer this, is there's 5 babies plus you, so there's 6. But it can only hold 4 babies, the raft. The only way that I can answer this is if one of those babies is mine. And I know this is terrible. I would choose to allow me and my child to sacrifice themselves for the other 4. That's hard to say that I would do that in that instance and everything, but did you pass your offspring on already? Is that your only offspring? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can make the question more and more difficult, and I understand that 100%. And I don't, even thinking about that, I don't know what I would do. But I feel like if the ref can only hold the let's say it can hold 5 babies, but not you, is you take your final your final decision there, and you go ahead and just pray to God that that raft makes it to safety with those 5 babies on it. That's all you can do is pray to God, and as you slowly drown or freeze to death or whatever, that's your choice. You have to make that choice. Uh, even as not a Christian, an atheist, I feel like we make that choice, and I'm okay with that. You know, but when people get into these discussions, Alex has a really hard question there and everything with the Catholic priests and everything, and there's a poison chalice. If God didn't give you a direct order to stop that, then you make that sin against your principles, and you tell that chalice is poison. Like you get to take that sin. That's your burden. That is your burden. I'm sorry, who cares about what the about not sinning at that point? I don't think that's the issue there. You commit a sin. That's fine. You got to do it. The Bible doesn't say that you shouldn't that you can't sin. Jesus gave us a route into heaven as sinners. So use that to your advantage, I guess, is the best way that I can say that. Use your sins appropriately. Why not? Just use them appropriately. You're already a sinner. Just use them appropriately. I'm not saying go out there and be nothing but sinful, but I mean, if you're gonna save lives, then yeah, especially innocent lives. But anyways, that's it. Go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, all that useful YouTube stuff. Supposedly helps channels out, everything. I'm gonna end this one here, and we'll come up with another video, maybe something on these two again. With Alex, he's got a lot here. He's got like a 2 hour message, 2 hour and a half, 2 hour 46 minute message going on. So, see you guys next time.